Hey friends, what's going on there? So quick lesson today. I want to talk about pentatonic fills that you can play, and I'll teach you how to play for the progression of D, C-Add9, and G. So here's the chord sheet I made for this lesson. You can get it over at my website, playsongnotes.com. It's lesson 348. It's a two-pager, right? The first one's going to show you a summary of that riff I just played. It's going to show you the chord shapes, and I'm going to explain the pentatonic scale super briefly. Just a quick primer there. I'll talk about the notes I'm playing in all these licks, right? Then I'm going to show you on page 2 a version with some counting, and I'll show you a drop D version of the same exact licks and fills if you want to get some extra practice there, and show you a few ways you can sort of take this further if you want to play some additional licks and fills. So I hope this is helpful for you. You know, to be honest, I am kind of new to lead guitar and doing licks and fills and such, but I was learning the scale this past week. I was learning a song called Down Low that Rock Me sent that in. Thanks for your support on Patreon, Rock Me. Really dig that song. It's by Town Mountain with Tyler Childers. Really cool sound. This uses the same progression, a lot of the same licks and fills. But while I'm working on that one, I wanted to get this lesson ready for y'all. So 2-page PDF. It's over at my website. I got hundreds of other PDFs for lots of other song lessons and exercise lessons such as this. You can get that on over at playsongnotes.com. 348. I think I've said what I need to say. Let's get into the lesson. Jump ahead if you know what you're looking for. And thanks to all of you who are supporting me on Patreon. It's super appreciated, and I can't wait to teach you this. So let's dive on in, and let's do it. All right, y'all. So first, let's look at the chords, and then we're going to look at the scale, right? So then we'll have the building blocks. We'll know what chords we need to strum, and we know what the notes in the scale are. And then I'll get into the riffs and the licks and show you how to do all that fun stuff, all right? So the chords we're going to use. So this progression is effectively, at its simplest, it's like a D, a C, and a G, right? Now for the C, we're actually using this C-Add9 voicing, and the simplest way to play that would be here on the left. These are like the basic voicings here, where you have your regular D chord, a D major chord, then you're gonna have your C-Add9, and then your G. These are 3 great chords to use in general, especially for beginners, because these 2 fingers are staying still for the C-Add9 and the D, on the G, I'm sorry. And then your ring finger is actually staying on this note for all 3 chords. Check this out. Right? So that's pretty good. That's like the starting point foundation. Now, I want to move into the way I'm playing them for this lesson, though, because we're going to do a few things a little bit different, which give this whole thing a bit more character and sound, right? First up, look on the right here, my preferred version. That's what we're talking about, right? This D, this C-Add9, and this G. A couple things of note. One is I'm not playing the thinnest string, right? The reason there is I don't want the D to sound bright and major. This note's gonna make it major because it's an F sharp. If we omit the thinnest string and we sort of stop our pick when it gets to that thinnest string, you don't let it go further, that kind of makes it sound like more like a neutral. It's a power chord technically. It's neither major nor minor for the D. And it's gonna work well because we're gonna be using a D minor pentatonic, and we want some of that minor vibe to come in there. Same for the C. We're not gonna play the thinnest string, and we're also gonna not push down on the 4th string here. If I play the 4th string, you're gonna notice it makes a dead sound because this finger is leaning into it and muting it. And likewise for the G. I'm going to mute the 5th string just by touching this finger into the 5th string. So I can play those thickest 5 strings. And the effect this all gives is it makes these 3 chords sound a bit more, I mean, for my money, it's a bit more raw and just, I mean, for the backwoods country inspiration I'm using for this, it feels more appropriate. Compare that to these. Those just feel so much more major and bright. We don't really want that. We want a bit of darkness. Not darkness, but, you know, a bit more of, I don't know the word for it, but hopefully you get the idea from hearing, right? So that's the idea here. I have some finger markings you're gonna see, and this might seem confusing at first. If the finger markings seem confusing, just ignore them. Because when I get to the riff, it's gonna become more clear. Sometimes we're gonna need to play the G like this and the C like this with our ring finger on the bass note and our pinky up here, but more on that later, okay? So those are the chord shapes. Next, real quick, let's look at this D minor pentatonic scale. So this video is not gonna be a full breakdown on the scale and how to play scales and all that sort of thing. Now I do have my tool Fret Monster, it's on my website, but you can just go to fretmonster.net. This is a tool that lets you pick out a key, and then it helps you pick out a scale, and then it'll show you the notes on the fretboard to match that scale. Now, if you go there and you do key of D, minor pentatonic, you're going to get the whole fretboard. We're only concerned, though, with the first 3 frets, right? So we have up to about here, right? The 3rd fret and down. That's all we're really worried about. And what you see on the screen right now is two different ways to look at the D minor pentatonic. One of them on the left is showing you the degrees of the scale, right? There's going to be 5 different degrees. It's the first, right? The flat third, the fourth, the fifth, the flat seventh, and then back to the first. Okay? That's going to be those are the 5 notes we're using, and they repeat, right? So if you played them all here, you'd get basically. And then back down. Okay, now you could look at the right version, which shows you the actual notes we're playing, right? The D, F, G, A, C, D, F, G, F, D, C, A, G, F, D, etc. I'm showing you both to help you like connect the dots here, right? And I'm not gonna, again, I can go in another lesson and explain the basics of this, but this is a map of the fretboard, right? These are all the notes and all the licks we're gonna be playing are coming from the sort of circles you see here. Now, just keep that in mind, and also notice that the bass notes for the D, which is going to be the open 4th string, right? For the C, which is 3rd fret of the 5th string, and for the G, which is the 3rd fret of the 6th string, those are all notes in this scale. That's important because when we do some of these licks and fills, we're going to be playing other notes in the scale, but we want to always usually end up on either the D or the C or the G. Okay? The licks are going to lead into those notes, and then we're going to strum the chords and be in good shape. So this is the fretboard map. You can get this on the PDF I have for this lesson. Again, let me get to the licks and fills now, and then we can sort of learn how to do these. So the easiest way to sort of visualize all that I'm going to be doing in this exercise are these 4 licks and fills. So the first one is going to be going into a D. Okay? And let me play them all once through. For the C-Add9, we're going to go. For the G, we're going to do. And then for the final D. Now you see here in my tab I have the riff and the little, the 6-note riff for each chord is on the left, and then you have a strum for the main chord. And notice how the main chord always starts on the bass note of that chord, right? For the D, the bass note, right? I showed you this earlier with the scale. For the C-Add9, the C, for the G, okay? And then back to the D. Now you could play these same licks and fills, and you could strum more. Okay, I'm going to get to that in a minute here, but let's look at these now individually and explain what's going on. So for the first one on the far left, the cool thing is this is all the lick, the fill, the riff is all on the 4th and 5th string. So we're going to be going on the 5th string, open to 3rd, and then on the 4th string, open to 3rd. Now I'm using my ring finger for 3rd fret on both these, right? And then we're going to go from open 4th string to 3rd fret on the 5th string. So practice that riff just back and forth over and again slowly. Okay, that's the full riff. You can do it again. And you might notice this is a very kind of circular thing. You could do it sort of in a circular pattern. And you're going to end up on the open 4th string for your D strum. Okay? You could practice this just by itself, on repeat. One more time. Okay, that's what we're going to do for that first chord. Now, the next one is going to be the C-Add9. This little riff and fill is going to come down from the 2nd string, to the 3rd string, to the 4th string, and end up on the 5th string, 3rd fret for the C-add9 bass note. And this is where I'm going to be using my ring finger for the bass note of the C-add9. Whereas before I was showing you with a middle finger. So, right? So context matters here. When you're doing fills, whoops, that can determine what fingers we use sometimes. Okay, so again, this is going on the 2nd string. We're going from 3rd fret to 1st fret. Now I'm using my ring finger on 3rd fret, index finger on 1st fret. And then 3rd string, 2nd to open. And then 4th string, 3rd to open. Okay? Now this, again, like in general, when you're learning these things, notice all these notes are all coming from the scale. So if you have my printout, my PDF, it's good to just study the sort of shape. And then you might memorize that on the thinnest 2 strings, we're basically going to be on the 1st and 3rd fret only, right? That's not tabbed out, but that's showing you that on the thinnest 2 strings, we're going to be 1st and 3rd fret. On the 3rd string, it's open and 2nd fret. That's it. Okay, and then on the 4th and 5th string, it's 3rd fret and open. Now, if you keep all that in mind and you play this again, you're just going from 2nd string, and you're basically going down the pentatonic scale. So it's a that might be a helpful way to remember it. Okay, now this 3rd riff, it's very similar to the first one. Open to 3rd on the 5th string. Open 4th string, back to 3rd on the 5th string, then open 5th string, and then 1st fret to 3rd fret, okay? And we're going to end up on the 3rd fret of the low E string, which is the bass note of the G, which is a home bass of that chord, okay? More time. And then the final one is my favorite because it's so easy to play and it sounds cool. It's basically going to be 4th string only. So my ring finger is doing all the action here. Open to 3rd, open to 5th, open to 3rd, and then open 4th string for our D bass note. So let's do the whole thing here one more time. So those are the notes we're going to play. And at first when you're practicing this, I think it's good just to worry about the notes. Don't stress about timing or strumming just yet. Now let's look at the page 2 of my PDF. It gives you the same tab, the same sort of same riffs, but they're tabbed out with timing. And I include this just in case it's a helpful way to sort of connect the dots. Because with guitar, there's so many ways you can visualize stuff. And this one takes up more space, and the timing might be confusing for some, but it might be more helpful for others, right? So I wanted to include it as well. So on page 2, again, up here, you're going to see we're starting on our strumming here. So we're starting with the D. Now on the 1, 2, 3, 4 count, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's my strum section. You could do whatever strum you want. I'm doing a bass note, strum, bass note, strum. And then on the 1 count that follows, I'm just going to sort of rest my hands into the strings. And that kills the sound. And that's helpful because the next thing that's going to happen is the riff. All right, So that would be the whole playthrough there. Now, one thing you'll note, if you look at the first page, you'll notice that we're starting with a riff before we get to the first D, right? But on the second page, we're starting with a D before we get to a riff. Let me explain what's happening here. Basically, the riff at the end of the fourth measure, after the final D, that's what we're starting with. We're borrowing that riff from the final measure, right? And then we're going to lead into that first full measure with the D. So let's basically do the whole thing now. I'm going to start with that trailing riff. I think it's called a pickup maybe, and then we're going to come in on that first measure, and I'm going to add my own strumming here, but I'm basically always going to I'm going to silence my strum on that second one count of each measure, okay? So. All right, now one last thing I want to show you as a bonus here is on page 2 also, we can go to drop D if you want, if you're brave enough. Get the 4th string and 6th string to be ringing together. That's drop D. This lets us play a full wicked 6th string and D chord, or at least include the thickest couple strings. Here's the tab for that. Same idea. The only thing that's different, there's 2 things. One is the G chord. Instead of doing a regular G shape, we have to put our ring finger down here on the 5th string, the 5th fret of the 6th string, and then I put my index finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, and I mute the highest string. Okay, so D. C-Add9 is the exact same, G, and back to a D. Okay, this is trickier to play, but it sounds more full and raw, right? And also this riff on the G measure, we used to play it like this. But because the 4th string and the 6th string are the exact same, we can just take that same riff, open to 3rd, open to 5th, open to 3rd, and then open. And do it on the low E string. So, low D string. So let's do the full thing and drop D. All right, so that's the drop D tuning. And there's one more Easter egg I want to show you as well. Let's go back up to standard. Okay, now for this final part, I want to talk about other riffs and licks and fills you can play. So this is a sort of just little bonus thing. I want to expand on this in the future lesson, but the idea here is there's 6 other riffs. These are just sample riffs, but they're all coming from that pentatonic D major scale, D minor scale. And here's the deal. You can sort of go into any of the chords we're talking about, right? The D, the C-Add9, the G, playing any of these riffs first. In fact, you could use one riff. Let's take this first riff here, this the 3rd to open to 3rd on the 4th string. I played that and I went into all 3 of the chords. I went through the same progression, D, C-Add9, G, and back to D, but before each chord, I just did this riff. And then go to the bass note of the chord. C-Add9, G, back to D. All right, so let's do another one of these riffs. You could do the second one here. It's going from 3rd, 5th string, 3rd fret, 5th string to open 4th string to 3rd fret on the 4th string. This is it, simple riff, 3 notes. But again, we're going to go into each of the 4 chords. Let's start with the D. Okay, that might sound kind of simple. Let's spice it up a little bit. This 3rd one. Okay, similar notes as before. Open to 3rd on the 5th string, open to 3rd on the 4th string, and then you repeat open to 3rd. So. I keep messing up there a little bit, but you get the idea. And then you could do this 4th one. One more time. All right, and then this the 5th one. Okay, let's do it. Okay, and one little more is this 6th one. Okay. So the cool part is you can technically mix and match these, right? You don't have to use the same one before each riff. You can use the other riffs I show you above or these 6 and just play around. See what sounds good as you transition and go play fills and stuff between chords. Hopefully this gives you a nice starting point. So once again, y'all, you can get the PDF for this at my website, playsongnotes.com. It's lesson 348. It's 2 pages. The first one gives you a quick write-up of all the 4 riffs I play at the beginning. I explain the chord shapes, explain the scale, and then I give you the same tabs written up a few different ways here. And then there's sort of other riffs you can practice at the bottom as well if you want to explore that. So I'm sort of still new to lead guitar, and I'm just getting started with getting comfortable with things, but I wanted to share this as I was working it out this week. So thanks all for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one. Bye-bye.